Good morning everyone. We are going to do a session today on mythology. Like as you can see the title, it says mythology literature based across globe. So that would mean that I am going to tell you a lot of mythological stories. Now see, understand what is the importance of mythological stories, because we are literature students, and when I talk about literature, literature consists of a lot of stories that are borrowed stories from across the globe. Now it says, now if you can look at the word mythology, it basically talks about certain myths, or it basically talks about certain stories which have been very popular, and some or the other way either they have become eponymous terms or probably there are some derivatives that have gone into literature because of these myths or mythology. Now let's understand when I say across globe, so you can talk about the Greek mythology, Indian mythologies, Scandinavian mythologies, Roman mythologies, anything for that matter. So I'm going to give you a brief about what are the different kind of mythology that you can see across the globe and how are they beneficial when as a literature student I see towards understanding language in a better way. Alright, so mythology is effective vocabulary. Vocabulary of course is an essential part, and when I talk about mythology based stories or mythology based with literature, we need to understand the vocabulary that is involved into it. So the Greek stories that I am going to tell you, there are certain Greek and Roman equivalents, right? Those equivalents I am going to tell you. See, the Romans borrowed from the Greeks or the Greeks borrowed from the Romans. This is something that you can understand when I tell you that there are certain equivalents for Romans and Greeks, certain gods and goddesses, the equivalent of which you can find in the Greeks also and with the Romans also. Vocabulary based on literature and book reading. Now when I talk about book reading, of course there is a lot of vocabulary that comes into day-to-day usage, and this is what you need to minutely understand, because there was always a philosophy how to do vocabulary. So understanding mythology again is a very integral part of that. Next is stories from Bible. आपने बहुत सारे biblical stories या biblical references पढ़े होंगे, सुने होंगे, and at times it is very difficult to understand where it has basically come from. So to brush up, this class is going to help you understand that basic phenomena fundamental of that. Certain idioms and phrases, again they are all derivatives or derivable from certain stories or probably certain written literature. Like if I have to enhance or enrich my literature, enhance my vocabulary, enhance my writing skills, or enhance my speaking skills, right, my communication skill for that matter, idioms and phrases again have to be well understood, because there are certain Chinese saying or there are certain Indian sayings or whatever. So whatever the culture is, whatever the civilization is they have their own idioms and phrases, and this is idioms and proverbs basically, and they are really into use. Various writers and philosophers, so that you understand, like on names of certain philosophers also you would find certain eponymous terms, and this is what I am going to tell you with the help of this class today. Next is Egyptian and Scandinavian god. There is certain similarity between the Egyptians and the Scandinavian gods also. Now see, when I talk about Greeks, Romans, Egyptians and Scandinavians, understand I'm even going to give you certain references, certain books, certain movies from where if you pick up those videos or those reading material, it becomes quite easy for you to imagine, understand and then bring it into your vocabulary. Alright, mythologies that shaped vocabulary and books and philosophers, of course. They could be the Greek ones, Egyptians, Romans, Scandinavian, French and German. So I'm going to give you an exposure or a reference to almost all of these depending upon what comes along. So maybe in this class I'm going to tell you a lot of stories also. So be prepared, keep a pen and paper in your hand so that when I tell you, you are able to write it down for better understanding, of course, so that it stays back in your mind. I'm doing this with the help of a PPT. I have a board, I would be writing it for you. So whatever I write, kindly jot it down, so that stays back in your mind, and later on for your revision it's going to help you a lot. Alright. The first story that I'm going to start with for you today is a Greek story, and this is the story of Troy. Now Troy, when I talk about, before I give you a brief of that, I'll like to tell you this is a story which is based upon Homer's Iliad and shall introduce a lot of Greek characters. Characters would not just be characters, but they would be eponymous terms and allusions. Right. Now when I talk about allusions, there's again a word like illusion, illusion and delusion. Please do not get confused between all the four words. They are completely distinctive of each other, completely different from each other. Right. So now when I talk about all those, let's understand what is the next the next one. I'll give you the story of Troy. Okay. There are two basic parties. There are Greeks and then there are Trojans. When I talk about the Greek people, there is Agamemnon, who is the king of Mycenae, and Menelaus, who is the king of Sparta, and both of them, they are two brothers. And then there is Odysseus. Odysseus is a king who is of Ithaca, but then he is loyal to Agamemnon. Achilles, he is an independent warrior. He does not want any king to rule over him, but despite under certain circumstantial things, he has to show his loyalty towards Agamemnon. Alright, and then there are Trojans. Trojans, the king who is the ruling king is Priam. Priam has got two sons who are going to be the protagonists of this particular story that I am going to tell you. One is Hector, the other one is Paris. And when I say Paris, the judgment of Paris, that I am going to tell you what it basically means. Chalo, let's start with this story. So the story basically starts with, there is a treaty. There is a treaty for which the king of Sparta, who is Menelaus, and Priam, they wish to sign. Right, they wish to sign. And Agamemnon is one such great king who doesn't want anybody to be equal to his. Right, so what he decides is that he thinks that I'm going to rule the entire world, and for ruling the entire world, he he suppresses these smaller kingdoms to bow to him. Right. So Agamemnon is that ambitious, and Menelaus is more of a person who wants treaties to be signed so that the trade or the other anything, the transportation, he is more of a person who is a business minded person. So he thinks that if they sign a friendly treaty with the neighboring cities or the neighboring countries or the neighboring places, it is going to become beneficial for the growth of the kingdom. So these are two brothers who have completely different temperament. He wants to rule and therefore he suppresses. He is the one who kind of wants to sign treaties and therefore expand his business, or he believes in expansion. Alright, so this one, Menelaus, he and Priam, both of them decide to have a friendly treaty so that they could have good commerce and good business. Now, because Priam is growing old, he does not want to travel. So, in place of Priam, he has his replacement, and his replacement, as a replacement, he uses two of his sons. The elder one, Hector, and the younger one, Paris. Both of them, they go to sign a friendly treaty with Menelaus. Now, when they go over there, Menelaus has a beautiful wife, and the name of that wife is Helen. So, you've heard about this term, Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy. If you remember the word Helen of Troy, where did it come from? So, of course, yes, it has come from the wife of Menelaus, who is very beautiful, right? And what happens is that after they have signed the entire treaty, a lot of celebration is going on. People are drinking, enjoying their food. Meanwhile, what happens is that Paris, who is the younger son of Priam, he happens to come across Helen. Of course, because there is a celebration, there are outsiders who have come to the kingdom. So they would always be a guest and a host, interaction. So in that interaction, Helen comes across Paris. Helen meets Paris. Menelaus is an old king and Paris is a young blood. He is a young blood. So what happens, and even Helen is quite young. So the two of them, they happen to fall in love with each other. Now here is the thing, the entire, things change, takes a very ugly turn. The two of them, they happen to fall in love with each other. So the friendly treaty, what is going to happen in the friendly treaty, we are going to discuss the same thing later in the class. So now let's understand what happens now. I am keeping this open for you so that you can write down who is connected to whom, so that later on you do not forget it. Alright. Agamemnon is married to Clytemnestra, right? And he has got a daughter named as Iphigenia, Electra or Orestes. These again have a lot of references to it. Menelaus, as I told you, is already married to Helen. Helen and Clytemnestra, both of them, they are sisters. So if these two are brothers, these two are sisters. And then Agamemnon and Menelaus, both of them, they are brothers. Helen and Paris, who elopes to Troy. Now the story which begins from here is that after the two of them, they have fallen to each other without Hector noticing of it, without Hector even coming to know of it. When they are on their way back to Troy, what Paris has done is that he has hidden the queen of Sparta in his ship, and on the way to Troy, the two of them, they come to know is that not the two of them, Hector comes to know is that the two of them, they have been hiding, his brother has been hiding the female in the chamber, in one of the chambers or compartments of the ship. Later on, when he comes to know of it, he is very furious because he considers that Paris is some kind of, he basically is some kind of a young boy who doesn't understand, that this could be very dangerous for the country, for their own country. It could be very dangerous because a lot of, lives would be at stake and people would be ready to kill. And this is something, just understand that he had taken away the wife of a king. Now, when you are eloping with the wife of the king, eloping is kisi ke saath bhag jana. Of course, she has run away with somebody else's. So why is the husband going to tolerate it? So in that condition, Menelaus gets very furious, and and Paris makes his brother understand that this is something which is going to be very, fatal for the two of them, for Paris also and for Helen also. So now when Hector comes to understand, because he had been preaching his brother that whatever he had done was wrong, so he even decided that they would go back to Sparta, and they are going to the Greeks, and they are going to hand over the wife to them. But Paris convinces that Menelaus is not letting Helen live alive, and even Paris is going to sacrifice his life. So either you go to Troy, you are again inviting a lot of trouble, or you take your brother to the king, to Agamemnon, to Menelaus. You are still inviting death for the two of them. So here is the time when Hector decides, all right, I would be taking my brother and the nonsense that he has done in his life, both of them back to the country, right? So he decides that he should be letting both of them come to Troy. So now finally the two of them, the two brothers, Hector and Paris, now accompanied by Helen, of course, on the journey, the three of them, they are back to Troy. Okay, and now when they have come, they would be meeting Priam. Priam is the king of Troy. So this is one part of the story, right? These are the characters which I have already told you. Just remember the names of the character, because where the eponymous terms come from, how are they eventually going to get used? This is what is something very important, so that you understand that why I am telling you this entire story, right? Now, before I proceed with this story, let's take a background dip, right? When I talk about the background dip, I'll tell you one more story. One more story would mean a fresh story for that matter. Okay, now let's begin with this story, the Apple of Discord. How are the stories related? What is the connection between them? How did they actually work? Let's have a look at it. It says, in Greek mythology, it says an apple of discord is a reference to the golden apple of discord. According to Greek mythology, the goddess Iris, tossed in the midst of the feast of the gods at the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, as a prize of beauty, thus sparkling a vanity-fueled dispute among Hera, Athena and Aphrodite. Now, what it means is that There's one goddess Hera who is married to Zeus. Right? The Greeks, they basically marry their own sisters. So the two of them, they are brothers also, brother and sisters, plus the two of them, they are married to each other. The other one that he speaks about is Athena. Okay? And the last one you speak about is Aphrodite. Okay? Athena is again a reference for Minerva, and Aphrodite is a reference of Venus, and she is the reference of Juno. Okay. These are the Roman goddesses and these are the Greek goddesses. So when I was telling you about the references, the same kind of story you are going to find with the Romans also. But right now, because we are discussing a story which started with Homer's Iliad, and it gives you a a Greek description of that, we'll stick to that. Okay, all right. So these are the equivalent, the Greeks and the Roman equivalents that I have told you. These are the Greeks equivalent and these are the Roman equivalents. Now when I talk about Roman, Hera, she is the queen of, because she is the queen married to Zeus. So she basically depicts royalty. Okay. Then there is Athena. Okay. She is the one who depicts, she is a great warrior. So of course she is the one who has a lot of arms, forces, right, and all the war techniques, right. And there is Aphrodite. Aphrodite depicts progeny, childbirth. She is the goddess of beauty and marriage, procreation. Leave this. Understand beauty and marriage. Now, what happened? How did this apple of discord, which is a very popular idiom, famous among the people, when people say there was an apple of discord. So I need to understand where this apple of discord actually come from, and how is Helen, or for that matter Paris, associated with the entire thing. So now the story begins for you to tell how this entire thing of falling in love with Helen happened. So this particular thing is responsible for that. See what happened, there was a marriage going on. And there is Iris or Iris. Could be written any ways. She is the goddess of spite. Right? Something would happen, she doesn't like. Something or the other way, she has to create some kind of dispute, some kind of fight between the people. Some enjoying that, the quarrelsome cat and carrots, or for that matter belligerence is very integral part of Iris. So she thinks that how is this marriage going on so well? I should be doing something that I am able to instigate some kind of fight between, or maybe some kind of disruption in this particular marriage party. So what she does is that she brings a very beautiful golden color apple. As you can see it in the picture over here, she brings in a very beautiful golden color apple. What she does is that she places that golden apple in the middle of the feast going on the middle of the table where the feast is going on, and then she says that one who is the fairest of all shall have it. When I talk about being fairest of all, I don't mean somebody who has a fair complexion, but fairest would basically mean that somebody who is the beautiful of all. So for being the fairest of all, there has to be a competition, otherwise who is going to decide that who is the beautiful of the most? Now, everybody competes, but then at the end of the day there are three competitors who come out to be as finalists. One is Hera, the other one is Athena, and then there is Aphrodite. These are the three who come out to be the three finalists. And what is going to happen now? They have to again decide that who is the beautiful of the three. So for that they had to find a person who would be able to judge it. They go to who? Hera's husband, who is Zeus, Z-E-U-S, Zeus, right? And then I asked Zeus, Zeus plays very clever, and then he says that I'm not the right person to decide. Why? Because Zeus was known to have multiple affairs out of his marriage, and because he had a multiple flings out of his marriage, he would not like to call his wife beautiful, and in front of his wife, if he happens to call the other women beautiful, that again was a bad thing for him. So he decides that he's not going to do that. Then they decide that they would be picking up some human who can do it for them. Now, when Paris was born to King Priam, there was an oracle that this boy is going to lead to the destruction of their entire kingdom. So Priam ने क्या किया होता है, when after Paris is born, so Priam does what? He had disowned his child. He wanted his son to let go, to die, whatever. So but then he survived, and he was being brought up by a shepherd, right? He was being brought up by a shepherd. So they, out of a random person, they go and meet that particular shepherd boy, the three of them, right? And then they tell him to decide that who is the fairest of the three. And till now, Paris has no idea who he is by his birth. He has no idea about his identity, his survival, his connection to Troy, or being the prince of Troy. Or the only thing he right now knows is that he is a shepherd boy, happily married to a beautiful girl and leading his life. So when the three of them, they meet him, the three of them, when they meet him, they try to manipulate him by tempting him. Now what are the temptations they offer? Because Hera, she is the queen, and she is the queen of royalty, regality. So she promises Paris that she is going to give him the entire wealth in the world, right? पूरी दुनिया का जितना भी धन है वो उसे देगी. And then Athena, because she is the goddess of wars, tactics. So she tells him that if you declare that I am the most beautiful of the three, then I am going to give you the best army in the world, which would be undefeatable, and nobody is going to ever conquer you. And then there is Aphrodite. Aphrodite says, because she is the goddess of beauty, now what is the temptation that she offers to Paris? She tells him that I am going to give you the most beautiful woman on earth. Now, leaving the two most sensible options aside, the only thing that he happens to fall for, of course, jokes apart, the only thing he happens to fall for is that he says that, alright, you are the prettiest of the all. So he declares Aphrodite as the goddess of beauty. So what happens is that she becomes the most beautiful of that, and Athena is very, angry with Paris. So now what happens is that as Aphrodite had promised him that she is the prettiest of all, so now she is the one who creates all the circumstances for Paris, that he is back to his father, leading his life as a prince, and then because of the circumstances, now he has got the most beautiful female on earth, Helen, right? And this is how the two stories get connected to each other. And Athena, because she was very angry with Paris, she becomes the reason for the war to take up, and that war, whether he loses or wins, we're going to see it in the later part of the story, right? So this is how I tell you, this is how that the two stories have right now got into sync with each other, and this is how they are connected to each other. Alright, this is all for the class today. I'm going to continue telling you the story in the later half. Thank you so much.